Hi, this is Steve Grantley from Stiff Little Fingers and the Zed Hedz, and you're listening to the Nothing Shocking podcast.
Want to know what's going on in the world of music? Then tune in to the Nothing Shocking podcast, a non-genre based, all ages friendly rock and roll program. Join us weekly for interviews with all your favorite rock stars from the mainstream to the underground. You can find us at nothingshocking.libsyn.com or anywhere you download podcasts.
We're putting the band back together.
The numbers all go to 11.
I'm talking about bands that rock. Led Zeppelin. What about Sabbath? AC/DC. Motorhead.
Does that mean it's louder? Isn't it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it?
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
I get up off the ground and raise my head. Days like this, think I should be dead. One for Satan, two for me. Let's cheat the devil, it's fun, don't you agree?
Welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'm your co-host, Jeff Untied, and with me in Dog Bowl Studios is
Coach Nez.
You can find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Libsyn or any podcatchers. Like our Facebook page or follow us on X at No Shock Pod.
You can also find the Nothing Shocking podcast on Rock Rage Radio every Sunday morning at 7 a.m. Central Time. Our sponsor is Ragged Records, located in downtown Rock Island, Illinois, and downtown Davenport, Iowa. We'd like to thank the Hong Kong Sleepover for allowing us to use their music for our intro and bumper ending. Tonight's guest is
Steve Grantley from Stiff Little Fingers.
Yeah, also of Steve Grantley and the Zed Hedz. What do they got promoting right now?
They got a new album, actually a new EP, Poison Ivy, Where Did You Go? It's a tribute to the legendary Cramps.
Yeah, released in 2023, and with Stiff Little Fingers, his main band, is doing some one-off touring this summer. Yeah. All right, hey, let's get to that interview.
All right, good night.
Good night. Steve, welcome to the Nothing Shocking podcast. I'd like to introduce you, my co-host, Jeff Untied.
Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Hey guys, nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Very much appreciated.
Hey, we're very excited. So let's get right into this. This past 2023, Steve Grantley and the Zed Hedz released the 4-track EP, Poison Ivy, Where Did You Go? Can you talk a little bit more about this writing and recording of this new endeavor?
Yeah, sure. It was Ivy's 70th birthday last year, and I wanted to kind of commemorate it in some way, and I just figured that she was I think she's an unsung hero of rock and roll, an overlooked feminist icon. You know, if you want a feminist rock and roll icon, Ivy's your girl, because she played guitar on all the tracks, on some of the tracks with the Cramps. She played the bass. She co-wrote all the songs. She was a big part of the image. She produced some of the records, and I thought, well, if you want a proper feminist rock and roll star, Poison Ivy, but she's kind of been overlooked. You know, she's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Why not? So the least I thought I could do was write her a song. So I wrote one song for Ivy, and then one song became two, and eventually I wrote 6 songs in her honor, about her and how I felt about her and what I thought that she'd achieved. So I scaled them down to 4 songs and put out an EP last year to commemorate her 70th birthday.
Oh, fantastic.
Nice. Well, you talked about scouring it down to 4 songs. How many songs did you write?
There were 6 in all, and they were all of, and I did all of them, you know, in a 1950s updated psychobilly voodoo style. And I had 6 songs, so I just there's 2 left over, but they're going to be on the next album that we're working on now. Okay. So they haven't gone to waste. We just really enjoyed going back to basics, recording as a 3-piece and keeping it very basic and 1950s, all 3 of us in a room recording together, which was great fun.
Oh, to kind of capitalize off that is like after listening to the Poison Ivy, Where Did You Go EP, I felt as though after listening to it, actually after the second time, it felt like this was part one of a part two series. Am I totally off by saying that?
No, not at all. I mean, once I started writing songs and getting, and kind of using the Cramps vernacular and the way the way Lux played with words, I could have just carried on writing song after song after song. But I thought, well, I can't do a whole album about Ivy because that's a bit creepy. But like I say, there are 6 songs, so there'll be two more songs about Ivy on the next Zed Hedz album, and would never surprise me if she crops up again after that. I find her a big well of inspiration.
Oh, very good.
Oh, nice. Can you talk a little bit more about your band members from the Zed Hedz?
Yeah, sure. We've got John Magner on guitar, and we've got James Aline on bass. And the band used to be called RT-Zed, but there were 5 of us, and it was very rock orientated, and kind of a modern rock band. And and when I was doing the Ivy stuff, when I was writing the Poison Ivy songs, I thought, I'm just going to go right back to basics, to what I used to love when I was a kid, so Bill Haley and the Comets and stuff, and Gene Vincent. And I just thought, well, why not? No one else is doing it at the moment. There's little niche market for rockabilly, voodoo type stuff. And I thought, well, I'm just gonna go back to that, right back to the beginning. And John and Jamie love that style too. So yeah, we just got cracking and recorded the songs. I sat at home and wrote them, but then we all got together and just ploughed through them and laid them down, very much as you would have done in the 1950s. None of the fancy recording techniques or any of that stuff. We just played it as a band.
Oh, nice.
Well, Rock and Roll Fever is my favorite track. How did the songwriting and the recording process of this song all come about?
Well, like I say, I was sitting down and I was thinking about different ways that I could celebrate Ivy and the music that she made. I've got the Cramps, I've got the Shakes. I love the noise that Ivy makes. It just made sense to me lyrically, and I just sat with an acoustic guitar and wrote song after song after song, but never trying to be too clever, never trying to be using the original building blocks of rock and roll and not being ashamed to do it. I've heard that kind of thing before, but I'm going to use it, but I'm going to put my own twist on it, and not be too afraid to go back to old style, rather than trying to be new and trying to do everything. I was always trying to, recreate rock and roll in my own head. I was always trying to be, trying to come up with stuff that no one had ever heard before.
Right.
And then I sort of unashamedly embraced rock and roll and went, right, well, I'm going to use those chord progressions, and then I'm going to use those tricks, and I'm going to use that phraseology. And it was liberating.
Very good.
And I thoroughly enjoyed myself, and I hope that the fun we had writing and recording the songs comes across, and I hope that the CD is immediate in the way that it was that we sort of created it.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Can you talk about a little bit about like the digital versus having physical product? Is it something you guys are putting out LP and CD versions, or is it just digital?
No, it's not. I understand that technology comes along and we must embrace technology. And so I use digital recording processes because I think unless you've got a very, very trained ear, most people who listen to records don't care how it's recorded or what it's recorded on. They just want it to be great music when it blasts through the speakers.
Yeah.
So I am willing to embrace modern technology, and we use modern microphones and all that stuff, and we don't record to tape, we record digitally. But I do like to have physical products. So yes. The original release was on CD, but there will be a vinyl version. I'm talking to because I want it to be on leopard skin vinyl again, because Ivy used to wear leopard skin cat suits, and I wanted to see if I could get leopard skin vinyl. So we're seeing if that's possible. But yeah, I love having because I'm a kid who, grew up through the 1970s when that's what you had. You bought records and you put them on a record player and you listened to them from start to finish and read all the lyrics and just, stared at the album cover while it was playing. You actually listened to the music, So I embrace all of it. I don't really like the streaming sites because they rip musicians off, but they have to be embraced because it's part of the new way. But most of the people who buy our stuff are of a certain age and they like physical copy too. So, we sell a lot of vinyl records and a lot of CDs, but there are some downloads. But to me, it's not a record unless it's on vinyl, because anybody can put out a CD and anybody can do like a digital download, but you really have to go to a lot of time and effort to make a vinyl record. So vinyl is where my heart is.
In memory serves me right, I believe Glenn Danzig released a leopard skin vinyl off his Elvis tribute album. Did he not? Do you know? I think.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. If that's the case, then great. I'll be doing the same. So I think that would be perfect for the Poison Ivy EP. But that will happen. I'm sort of next week. We're pretty much going into production with that, and I'm going to do a limited amount. Once they're sold, they're sold. But it really has got to be on vinyl. That's how I feel about it.
Oh, very good. I want to talk a little bit more about the physical product versus the digital release. And, we've talked to many artists on a weekly basis that their thought processes are different about releasing new music. Some are embracing the technology of releasing singles at a time on the internet digitally. And then other artists, feel as though that the physical product is still the way of the way music should be released. And this also goes to EP versus LP, however you want to talk about it, or CD. But for you, what sustainability wise, what is the most practical solution for you and the rest of your band when it comes to physical product release?
I think it's got. I prefer vinyl and CD because I'm old school. But I will provide digital downloads because I think that you have to embrace modernity. But I don't think that you really feel the same way about a download on your phone as you do with a piece of vinyl that's sitting in the corner of your room.
Yes.
That you can look at. That my record collection. Someone said this to me years ago. My record collection is like a poor man's art collection. That's my work. They're my works of art over there. I've got Led Zeppelin and Sex Pistols and Clash and and I've got Roy Orbison. That's my art collection over there, and I want to add to it. And so I'll buy a CD because I want to put it on in my car, and then I can put it into my computer and I can download it and I can listen to it on my phone. But ultimately, for me, it's got to be on vinyl and CD because then it's real. But that's because I'm old school. I'm old fashioned. And I put a lot of store and value by music, whereas I think a lot of young people don't put as much store by music as maybe my generation used to.
Exactly.
But I still do, so I want it out on vinyl and I want it out on CD.
Oh, very good.
That's the one for me. So that's the way I would go. I would feel like it wasn't a proper release if I just did a digital release.
I would agree with you.
And I also think that having a 12 or 10 or 12 or 14 track album, if that is your body of work, that's your statement from that period of your life, and then you move on to the next period. If you're releasing singles in dribs and drabs digitally, I think that's fine for someone like for all the modern artists and Beyonce and all that stuff. But it's not personally, it's not for me. That it's not the way things are done. I like to create a body of work in a period of time and put it out all in one go, so people can enjoy that, hopefully, and that's your artistic statement, because I do think that rock and roll is art.
Oh, well said.
Yeah, very good. Well, what I was going to ask you is the album came out in December 2023. What are your plans for? Are you going to tour behind the EP or do any shows?
Well, we did do one show just before Christmas for the Poison Ivy EP for people who are in the fan club, which was great. And we are currently we're working on new material. I'm writing new songs. We've just been in the studio. I'm laid down 4 songs, and we'll be adding to that. So I would think that there'll be a Zed Hedz album out later this year, and we will do shows on the back of that. Absolutely. I don't think there's any point in being in a band or releasing a record if you don't go out and tour off the back of it. But But the EP was something that we wanted to put out, but we didn't. We only did one show off the back of that. But when the album comes out, we'll definitely be doing a whole set of shows. We'll do as much as we possibly can. We've had offers for summer festivals and stuff, and a couple of support dates. So I'm just going to try and put that all together, and then get a release date where it all coincides.
Any chance we can catch you in Chicago?
And that's not with the Zed Hedz. That would be lovely. I'd love to do that, but it's just so difficult now with work visas and permits and stuff to tour America.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be out in May with Stiff Little Fingers, because I'm a drummer with Stiff Little Fingers. So I'm going to be out, and it's just under $5,000 to get me a work permit.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absurd.
So it's hard to get that together, and but I would like to do it eventually, but at the moment it's not possible. We would only be doing the UK off the back of this when the new album comes out. I doubt very much we'd be able to go to America just yet.
Well, that's a bummer. But I want to ask one last Cramps question. They were such an influence in the punk rock and even the rock and roll industry itself. How do you view the Cramps, within the history of rock and roll music? Where do you think they belong?
I think that I don't think they're a punk rock band. I know they came out during the punk rock era and they were informed by punk rock, but I see them as a classic rock and roll band, like in their own words. There's a difference between rock and roll, and they were the epitome of rock and roll. And I have them right up there with the greatest heroes of rock and roll, like Elvis and Gene Vincent. And I just see them as a classic rock and roll band that will never die. You'll be able to listen to their music in 200 years' time, and it will still stand up.
Exactly.
And it won't have got old. It won't have got old-fashioned. It won't be. It's a classic sound, and I just don't think it'll ever get old. It's they're Bill Haley in the Comets, all those guys, that they're right up there with them.
The strange thing that I found about the Cramps, I found them to be the classic rockabilly band of sorts, and I guess because times were changing, the sound of the rock and roll industry was changing so much that. The label didn't want to put too much promotion into what they were doing. Why do labels sign bands, but then they don't push the promotion for a band like that has such, I guess, maybe a classic sound?
I don't know what happened there. I mean, I remember seeing interviews with Lux and Ivy, and them saying, we get signed to a label, and they say, we're going to promote you in exactly the right way. And he said, all you need to do is put adverts in newspapers and put us on the TV. Just get us on the TV. It speaks for itself.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a lot of bullshit spoken by record company executives. There used to be. There's not as many of them as there used to be. But they just talked a load of nonsense, and it's like the Cramps didn't need anything special. Just put them in front of audiences, and they'll do the rest. I don't know whether maybe it was they didn't have mainstream appeal, possibly. But I don't. I think that that record companies were trying to pigeonhole them, and it just put them out there and let people make their own minds up.
Oh, very good.
Yeah. Well, you talked a little bit about the Zed Hedz morphing out of RT-Zed. Is that project RT-Zed? Is that finished, or is that something you'll continue on with eventually someday?
No, I mean it was like a natural progression. And when I did the Poison Ivy EP, I did think this feels like home. And so we're not a 50s pastiche band. There's going to be a bit of the old RT-Zed and with a rock and roll 1950s that's close to our hearts, a rock and roll inflection. So it's going to be a modern rock and roll band as far as I'm concerned. What had happened with RT-Zed as well was it got very, very serious. I looked at the songs that I was writing, and I was very, very proud of the records, and still am. But I just wanted to do something that was a little light-hearted, because I just saw the world, it's getting deep and meaningful now, but I just saw the world getting more and more serious, and I thought, well, people don't want to listen to music that's equally as serious. If you want gritty realism, look out of your window, look at your phone, or look at the TV. So I'm going to try and write songs that are a little bit more entertaining and a little bit more light-hearted, because that's what I think people need right now. They don't need gritty realism,
Oh, very good.
Because it's all too much for real. So that's that. There was a departure, and as far as I'm concerned, with what the Cramps used to say about a rock band and a rock and roll band, they're very different. And I thought, I don't want to do modern rock. I'm going to do what's closest to my heart. I'm going to go the rock and roll route. So that's the difference. And also the lineup changed. It's different, but it's a slightly different lineup because it used to be 5 people with me up the front playing guitar and singing, and now it's 3 of us. But I play the drums standing up and sing from the drum kit with John on guitar and Jamie on bass. Just being in a 3-piece band is liberating because there's so much space. So there was a lot of factors that made me sort of close down RT-Zed and open up Steve Grantley and the Zed Hedz.
So nice. Cool. Well, that leads right into what
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense.
Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that leads right into what I was going to ask you next about, I dabble with vocals a little bit, but I have no rhythm. Always love drums, but I can't play. Can you talk a little bit about that challenge of playing drums and singing at the same time?
Well, it was. I did when I came up with the idea. I mean, Stiff Little Fingers had been on the road, and Slim Jim Phantom's band had supported us. And obviously, Slim Jim is the first person that I ever from the Stray Cats. Yeah. He was the first person I'd ever seen who stood up and played the drums. And so, on soundcheck, and I've known him for over 20 years. So, but I stood behind his drum kit and I said to him, "I really don't know how you do this. I don't know how you play drums standing up." And it never occurred to me that I could do it. It was just that, like 6 months later, I was thinking, well, I'm going to do this Poison Ivy EP, and if I want to do it live, how are we going to present it? And I did think, well, maybe you could do what Slim does and stand up and sing the songs and play drums at the same time. And I thought, well, actually, that's not a bad idea. So I just went into the back room where my practice kit is, and just stood there and used the Rat Tom as a snare drum. So I'm standing up. And just played through a couple of songs off the top of my head, just acoustically, just on my own. And I thought, I can do that. And that was it. I must admit, it came very naturally. But I've been playing drums since I was 11, so that is something I can put on autopilot. So, it came pretty easy. The only thing that is difficult is it takes a lot of energy to do both.
Yeah.
You have to kind of what I found when we were rehearsing and we did the live show, as I'm having to calibrate that I don't go too far on the vocals or too far on the drumming. I have to keep them just calibrated nicely so that they rock along together. Because you have to, otherwise you might expend too much energy and you just won't have enough puff to be able to sing the songs. So I'm not taking it easy, but I am aware that I need to calibrate the amount of energy that I'm putting into each thing, the singing and the drumming.
How do you view yourself first, as the lead singer or the drummer? Are you the lead singer that plays drum, or are you the drummer that's also a singer?
Oh, I don't know. Everybody. I've been singing all my life, and I've been writing songs all my life. But I made a living. People would hire me as a drummer. And so, I just wanted to be a musician and make money from doing what I love. So, people want me to play the drums. I'm there to play the drums. But I've always written, I've always recorded. And really, it was practicality. I don't want anybody else to sing these songs. I don't really want to have a drummer in my band. It's very difficult, to get the right people. So I thought, well, I'll have a go myself. So I think ultimately, I would say I'm a songwriter, to tell you the truth. And if it means that I have to sing the songs, I will. And if it means that I play drums, then I will. I mean, in Stiff Little Fingers, I'm very much the drummer, and I'm happy to be the drummer. I'm not sitting at the back thinking, well, I want to be up the front singing. I don't think that for a second. I love being a drummer in Stiff Little Fingers, but we don't work all the year. And I'm kind of hyperactive, and I've got loads of ideas and want to do lots of things. So when I'm not doing Stiff Little Fingers, I do this. And if that means I play the drums and sing at the same time, great. So I just consider myself a songwriter, really.
Fair enough.
Nice. And then besides a songwriter, you're also an author. Can you talk a little bit about, you've co-written 2 books, Come On Feel the Noise, The Story of Slade, and The Who by Numbers. Can you talk a little bit about those endeavors?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it was when I was in school, the only thing that I was any good at was English. I was, that was the only thing that I was any good at. Hence songwriting. I was always writing, prose and stuff. And I came up with an idea for a drummer book, and I knew someone who was an author, and I said, "Listen, I've got this idea for a drummer book," and it was just telling stories about how mad drummers are. That was what basically starting with Keith Moon and John Bonham and going on because this company were very interested, but at the last minute they said, "No, we've decided that multiple personalities books don't sell that well, but we know you're a Who fan. Would you like to write a book about the Who, because there's no song-by-song guide to the Who? Would you be interested in doing that?" Because I'd sort of submitted a book proposal to them for the Who book, so they knew I could write. So that was the first band I'd ever seen. The first band I ever saw was the Who. Yeah. So it's like one of my favourite bands, and I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to write a book about the Who." So that was that. That took 6 years, and in between that, there was a book company, a publishers who was doing celebrating the 70s, and so my co-writer and I put forward the idea to do a book about Slade, the glam rock band, because there hadn't been a book about Slade for at least 30 years. So we wrote "Come On Feel the Noise" about Slade, and so that's how it came about. So I started the Who book, then I did the Slade book, then I finished off the Who book. It kind of come in 3 parts. And I've done book proposals for people who've got, so I sort of put the proposal together and they've got publishing deals off the back of it. But what I found was that being an author takes up so much time. It is a huge endeavour. And unless something really interesting came along, I was no longer interested in writing a 70 or 80,000 word book. Actually, someone asked me the other day, the only book that I would like to write would be Paul Cook from the Sex Pistols. I'd like to write his life story, like write with him, because he's the only Sex Pistol who hasn't written a book, and I'd love to hear Paul's side of the story.
Yeah, very good. I wanted to bring this back to RT-Zed. In 2018, the band released this fifth studio album, Funk Punk. The album was actually crowdfunded and financed by crowdfunding. Can you talk a little bit more about the crowdfunding platform? Was it a good experience for the band? Talk a little bit more about it.
Yeah, it was great. When we did Funk Punk, that was. I didn't know how to. Stiff Little Fingers had just done a crowdfunding project, and it had worked tremendously well for us in Stiff Little Fingers. So I thought, well, I'm going to do the same thing, and it worked really well. And there were things that people could buy, and so there was one thing that people could pay some money and they could come along to the studio, 10 of them, and listen to the first playback of the record. And it all helped fund the vinyl and the recording and the CDs and everything. And it worked really well. But I think what happened was that one of the companies went out of business and a lot of people didn't get their money back. And I think a lot of people got burned. So the idea of the GoFundMe type of thing had started to lose its taste for music buyers, because a lot of people got burned when this company went down. So I just decided that what I would do is I would just wait. I would record and wait until I had enough money myself to actually self-fund and put the record out myself. So it's not something that I do anymore, but at the time it worked brilliantly well, and I felt that people got a good, it was good for both parties, the band and the people who were buying the music.
Very good.
Yeah. And you've probably answered this a few times, but for our listeners that might not know, can you talk a little bit about how you got in with Stiff Little Fingers? And I think you joined them in '96. Did you audition, or how did it work?
No, I mean, I'd already been in a band with. So Jake Burns is the lead singer and the main man of Stiff Little Fingers.
Yeah.
And I'd been in a band with him from 1983 up till about 1987.
Oh, nice. Called
Jake Burns and the Big Wheel. And Jake had split Stiff Little Fingers up in early '83, and then put adverts in this rock and roll newspaper called The Melody Maker, and he advertised for a drummer in the back of that. So I went down and auditioned and got the job and was in a band with Jake for 4 years, Jake Burns and the Big Wheel. Then I went off and joined a pop group, and he got Stiff Little Fingers back together again. And then 10 years later, in '96, Dolphin Taylor, who was the drummer at the time, was leaving, and Jake called me up and said, "Do you fancy working with me again?" And I went, "Yeah, sure." So I didn't audition or anything because I already knew Jake, and we'd done sessions together, and I'd been in the band with him for 4 years, and we were mates. We were, as much as anything else, we were old friends. So yeah, I just got the call and started playing and recording in early '97.
Oh, so
nice,
so cool.
And yeah, it's been haven't looked back.
We take this back to you label yourself as a songwriter first, and so I guess maybe we ask a lot of questions to artists as far as vault material. How much of Steve Grantley music is in your vault that hasn't been released yet? Do you have quite a bit of music that's sitting there waiting to see the light of day?
Not really, to tell you the truth. It's sort of one of those things where I kind of release it as I record it, but there are a lot of ideas floating about. So there's a lot of half-written songs, things that need finishing off, books and books and books of lyrics, and musical notepads full of riffs and chord progressions and things, but no finalized songs. Maybe 12 songs at most that haven't been released. But really, because they're not good enough, to tell you the truth. And I've listened to them and thought, yeah, they didn't quite work. But my idea is that you have to write the bad ones or the average ones to get to the good ones. Just write the song, get it finished off, and then move on. That's what I try to do.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about Eighth Wonder. That I believe that might be the pop group you were referring to, from '83 to '89, with a female singer, Patsy Kensit. Can you talk a little bit about joining that band and that experience?
Yeah, it was wild, really, because it was a fluffy pop group, and I was a dirty punk rocker. You know, I was a rocker. But as I said before, I just wanted to make music and earn a living. I didn't want to do a day job, and and so my friend, who I'd been in bands with since we were teenagers, I'd gone off and done Jake Burns and the Big Wheel and stuff, and Jeff had joined this local group called Eighth Wonder, who had this famous girl, Patsy Kensit, in it, and they would and they got themselves a record deal, and he was doing great, but they sacked their drummer, and Patsy said to Jeff, "Do you know any drummers? Because we're doing this video and we need someone to be able to be on the drums." So Jeff called me, and I went down and did the video. And it's just like 96, 97, and got on great with everybody. And then Steve Dagger, who was the manager, said, we'd really like you to be our permanent drummer. We've got, San Remo Festival next week and this, that, and the other. And that was it. I joined the band. And it really wasn't my kind of music. It was a fluffy, lightweight pop group, but it was so much fun. And also the band was tremendously successful. So it was signed to CBS Sony and had #1 records in Italy and Japan. And we worked with the Pet Shop Boys. We had a massive hit in France. Where I spent weeks and weeks and weeks in France. And it was just a whirlwind success for 2.5 years. And I experienced a lot, first class flight, working with amazing video directors, recorded an album that never got released, actually, but worked with, it was just, 1 minute I was nowhere and the next minute I was on top of the pops.
Yeah.
And even though it was a crap pop band, I loved every minute of it. And
awesome.
Embraced it totally. I got my first drum deal, my first drumstick deal, my first cymbal deal, went on an international tour. And we played live. I mean, the band could cut it live. It was a good band, and I have no regrets at all. So some punk rockers say to me, you ain't no punk rocker. You're in that shit band, Eighth Wonder." But as far as I'm concerned, that was almost punk rock in its own way. It's like there I was on top of the pops playing this fluffy pop music. It was good fun. Well, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I have no regrets at all.
That's awesome.
Let's talk a little bit more about the punk scene in the now. In the States, the punk scene is in such little small pockets and in larger metropolitan areas, and it's really hard to find. If you go to Chicago, you have to really look hard for it. New York City, you have to really look hard for it. But for you in the UK, what is the punk scene like? Is there much of any, or is it in those small pockets and weird little locations?
It's again, it's the same as it is in the States by the sound of it. I mean, we do have the Rebellion Festival, which is a big punk rock festival, and punk rock bands still do very well here. The Ruts are going great guns, Stranglers still going great guns, the Damned, and there are some young punk rock bands, but it's still seen very much as nostalgia now. You've got 60-year-old punk rockers with T-shirts put together with safety pins, mad and Mohican haircuts, but then they go back and do their, in the day, to go back and do their banker's day job, and wash the dye out of their hair and Mr. Sensible. I think it's a nostalgic musical genre now, and that's why I don't see, even Green Day. How old are Green Day now?
Exactly. Very much so.
And that's one of the reasons that I'll tell you what, one of the reasons was that I sort of embraced the rock and roll thing was that I felt more comfortable doing that because it felt like it suited my age. I felt like I wasn't trying to be. I suddenly realised that I could do rock and roll, proper rock and roll, and not be trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not trying to be an angry punk rocker. I'm not trying to change the world or come up with some new rock and roll style. That ain't going to happen. So I embraced the true nature of rock and roll, which I felt more comfortable as a person doing.
Absolutely.
Like I say, I love being in Stiff Little Fingers, but that's because Stiff Little Fingers are one of the original punk rock bands. But I didn't want to follow. I couldn't follow go down that route. And I just think that now it's a musical genre that's from the past, punk rock, like jazz is and like classic rock is. It has its place in musical history, but it's not as relevant anymore as it used to be.
Exactly. Yeah.
Not for younger artists to embrace. Maybe in another 50 years' time it'll come back round, and then it will be a valid. But at the moment, it would just be nostalgia.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Can you talk? You alluded to the May tour that you got coming up of UK. What are the venues like? Are there still those? I'm not familiar with the venues in UK as much, but are there still some iconic venues that are around? Like in the US, a lot of the iconic places are either dying off or some new ones are popping up. But what are the venues like in the UK?
Well, when I looked at the tour dates, I didn't recognise half of the names of the places of the gigs that we were playing. So we'll play wherever they want us to go, really. But it's all about sort of 800 capacity venues, 800 to say 1,200 capacity venues. Some places more. I mean, we're doing punk rock bowling, and that's like 10,000 people. So there is still a hunger out there for the band and the audience, and there are young people like in the UK when Stiff Little Fingers play venues, the front rows, the first three front rows is like 18 to 25-year-olds, and then you've got the older, larger punk rockers behind that, who can only last like three songs in the mosh pit, and then they have to go and have a rest by the bar. And that's as well as the band, that is. But we just play wherever we can, and we'll play in a buddy guy place, or we'll play. We really go wherever the promoters think that we're going to sell the most tickets.
Fair enough. One last,
but there are a few places that are still iconic places, but I can't remember them off the top of my head. I only glanced at the tour dates when they were sent through a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right, well, we got one last question for you, then we'll leave you alone.
Okay, guys.
Yeah, ask this question to all of our guests. The mystery of rock and roll, that with the dawning of internet and social media, there is no mystery any longer. With bands not releasing physical product anymore, the mystery has kind of gone away. For you, the artist and the fan of rock and roll, what do you prefer, this new age of accessibility? Because if we didn't have the internet, we wouldn't be doing it with you today. Or do you miss that mystique and mystery that rock and roll once had?
It's a really difficult one, isn't it? I think that if a band does it right, they can still be mysterious and they can still have magic about them, no matter how accessible they are. It's the way in which you're accessible. If you lay yourself open and you're doing endless things, then people are just going to get fed up with you. But you can. I think there are subtle ways that you can use the internet and still be not necessarily mysterious, but there still can be some sort of mystique about the band. I think it's the nature of the people who are in the group as well. Their personalities can make a difference as to who they are as people. But as far as I'm concerned, ultimately it's about how, when you put that music on and you put it into your CD player, or you press go on your CD player in the car, or when you lay the needle on the record, it's what comes through the speakers. Does that move people? And that can't change. It either does or it doesn't. So I used to listen to the Who's Quadrophenia was one of my favorite albums, and there's a track on there called The Real Me, and it never fails to give me goosebumps and make me want to, I'll put that on when I'm getting ready to go out on a Friday night, and that's what I'm trying to achieve with my music. I'm trying to excite people and entertain them and thrill them, so that they want to drive a little bit faster, or I want to excite people and thrill them, and that just comes from the music. And so I don't think, and also I think that the internet's been fantastic because it's given me access to people I don't have to have a record deal. I don't have to have a record deal. I sell more records by doing it through my own label, Hypermania, than I ever would. And the people have got access to me, and I've got access to them, and it's kind of special because they get like a record that comes through, and it's signed by me. So perhaps that's a different version of the magic of the music, the way it used to be. To a certain extent, David Bowie was untouchable, but when the Sex Pistols came along, they went, and like Led Zeppelin, like 4 ants on a stage, and the Pistols went, no, we're real, we're here, we're right here with you, here we are, you can see the whites of our eyes. That was so in a way, getting rid of those barriers was what punk rock was about. So maybe it's not such a bad thing.
Fair enough.
That bands aren't quite as untouchable as they used to be. So there is a bit of there was a bit of mystique, but I think actually accessibility is good in its own way as well.
Oh, very good.
It sounds a bit quite. I'm kind of sounding convoluted because I'm kind of still working it out myself. But I do think that for small artists like me, it gives me access to an audience that I never would have had because I just couldn't compete with large record labels. But now I can.
Oh, very good. Well, like I said, we're running out of our allotted time for the evening. Is there anything that we left off tonight that you would like to plug or promote?
Not really. Just if you go to Steve Grantley and the ZedHedz.com, that's where you can get the Poison Ivy EP. And there's going to be a new album later on in the year. And thank you for inviting me to do this. And I'm glad you like the EP. I'm thrilled when anybody says to me, it makes it all worthwhile when someone says, I love your EP, Steve. It makes it all worthwhile. That's what it's there for.
Absolutely.
I love the fact that people are what I call using the music. So they put it on when they get up in the morning before they go to work, or they put it on in their CD player in the car, or on their way to work, or they go running and they listen to the EP. That to me is what making art is all about. The people love it, enjoy it, and they use it in their lives.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Exciting. I loved it. It was fun, and I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, great! Thanks, guys. I really appreciate. Like I say, I really appreciate your kind words, and I really appreciate you asking me to do this.
Absolutely.
It's been great fun.
This is how it's going to work out. We're about 2 weeks behind on our episodes, but once Jeff, the editing wizard over here, gets it all cleaned up, we'll send it to your PR person immediately, and I can send it to you through WhatsApp as well. But,
that's great.
Steve, thank you so much for the opportunity. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Guys, I appreciate it too. Listen, email me, and then when I'm in Chicago, come to the show. Come to the Stiff Little Fingers show, and we'll meet up and have a beer.
Absolutely. We'll do that. We appreciate it, man.
And we'll get together and have a beer, because I'll be sick of those guys by that point in the tour, and it'll be lovely to meet. It'll be lovely to meet and talk to someone who I really want to talk to, rather than those bunch of cunts.
That's awesome.
Absolutely, we'll do that. Thank you so much.
I don't really want. Listen, guys, Eric and Jeff, thank you so much, guys. I've thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Take care of yourself. We appreciate it.
Cheers, guys. Bye then.
Bye.
Everybody grinds the stone and makes their own mistakes. Hide in the headlights, fight the grip of fear. You can make your dreams come true, but you just can't do it here. Hey. Everybody eyes the gun and screams inside their head. Everybody bites their tongue and pays their bills instead. Hide in the spotlights, fight the grip of death. You can have the air you need, but you best not take one breath. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances. Everybody knows the game is fixed, there is no prize. Everybody pulls the plug and says their last goodbyes. Move to the sunshine, fight the grip of nights. If they ever take from you, then you plug out both their eyes. Hey. Roll the dice. Take your chances.
Welcome to the night. You think you know Night Demon? Then the Night Demon Heavy Metal Podcast is for you. Step into the darkness as we peel back the curtain to give you an unprecedented, all-access look into the mind and the heart of the demon. We're talking band history, song analysis, studio anecdotes, stories from the road. It's everything a diehard Night Demon fan could want and more. This is the only place to learn the inside scoop, The deep dive trivia, the untold tales from the band members themselves and those closest to the Night Demon story. Need more? The Sacred Night Demon Crypt will be pried open to reveal demo recordings that have never before seen the light of day, all with in-depth commentary by the band and the people who were there for the writing and recording process. This is a gold mine, a treasure trove of all things Night Demon. Head over to nightdemon.net or wherever you listen to podcasts.